Well, we have a wonderful follow-up here where we're going to have some examples of non-Soylent Green futures that are much more exciting than what was happening at the end of that movie. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce our two panelists this afternoon, Dr. Bob Quinn. Dr. Bob Quinn was raised on a 2,400-acre family-operated wheat and cattle ranch in southeast of Big Sandy, Montana, which was started by his grandpa Quinn in 1920. He earned a BS in botany in 1970 and an MS in plant pathology in 1971 from Montana State University in Bozeman. He received a PhD in plant biochemistry at the University of California at Davis, California in 1976 and returned home to run the family farm in 1978. In '83, Bob started Montana Flour and Grains to sell high-protein wheat from his farm to whole-grain bakeries. In '86, Montana Feed and Grain introduced an ancient organic wheat using the name kamut, and Bob will be telling you about that. In 1988, Bob converted his entire farm to regenerative organic operation. In 2012, he started the Oil Barn, which produces high oleatic organic safflower oil, and in 15, Big Sandy Organics, which produces crackling kamut ancient wheat snacks. He is active in many organizations locally and nationally to promote organic and regenerative agriculture. Dr. Quinn recently wrote the book Grain by Grain with his co-author, geographer Liz Carlisle, which summarizes his philosophy of the tie between agriculture, food, and health, and the importance of local production of food and fuel. He is now working to create a 700-acre regenerative organic research and education center in the middle of his farm. He is joined on stage by Ms. Nona Yehia from Vertical Harvest. An accomplished architect by training, Ms. Yehia built Vertical Harvest from the ground up as North America's first vertical hydroponic greenhouse. She also pioneered the company to focus on inclusive, customized employment for people with physical and intellectual disabilities. CNN has named her a champion for change, and in 2021, Vertical Harvest was included in Fast Company's world-changing ideas in both their food and social justice categories. Under her stewardship, the company has embarked on its ambitious plans to scale to 10 new cities over the next 5 years and advance its mission to use food as a medium for positive social change. Thank you for being here. Bob? Yeah. Press that to go forward. Okay. And we'll be able to see.
Okay, great.
Right.
Antoinette, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Antoinette. I really appreciate that. And here we are. Greetings from Big Sandy. This is my home. It's a great honor and thrill to be here and to join this conference that I'm really enjoying. So, boy, it's fantastic. We are in north central Montana. We're in between the Bear Paw Mountains that you can see there and the Missouri River breaks. This is Big Sandy. Population 600, main streets 2 blocks long. We had such excitement a couple months ago. There was a new business moved into town. And right at the end of Main Street, 2 brothers came in. One was a veterinarian and one was a taxidermist. And they put up a big sign. It said, Big Sandy Veterinary Clinic and Taxidermy. And then in very small letters, it said, either way, you get your dog back. So, anyway, I thought I would give you a little quick history of my role in agriculture and our families. Farming started in the Big Sandy area really in about 1912 and to 15, and homesteaders came in at that time. My great-grandfather was farming in Washington, and this is a picture of his thrashing rig, which he brought to Big Sandy in 1919. He was a big operator. He had a daughter that my grandfather had an eye on, and in 1920, they got married, and here's my grandfather on his very first pull-type combine. This reduced the amount of men needed to harvest from about 10 to 12 to 2, plus a truck driver. And they were pretty excited about that. He farmed our land between 1920 and 1948, And mostly he was a cattleman. He once told me, he said, the only money I ever made was raising cows. He says, you know, you don't have to buy anything for them. So there's no input. So he really liked that. My father started in 1948, came back from the war and had a job as an electrical engineer in Atlanta. He decided he didn't cotton to the city life too much. He came back to the farm and farmed there for 30 years from 1978. This is his self-propelled combine. Now we've even advanced from a two-man operation to a one-man operation, bringing in the wheat. He started using ag chemicals in the early 50s, and his goals were high yields. Actually, high yields was a national goal. The national goal in those times after World War II was food cheap and in abundance. And it was achieved. But not very many people talk about the full cost of cheap food. You know, really there's a very, very high cost for cheap food, but we don't pay it at the checkout counter. We pay it later. We pay it at the doctor's office. We pay it, the farmers pay it, who go broke, not being able to get enough money for what they sell and what they produce compared to what it costs them in inputs to produce that in fertilizers and chemicals. When the farmers go broke, half of my neighbors are gone that were there in the 1950s and 60s, half. I wouldn't call that a very big success story. And when the farmers leave and go broke, the small communities that they support suffer. And half of Big Sandy's two-block Main Street has businesses that are closed up. Our environment and our climate, we've heard lots of talk about that already, also is a big loser, and it costs enormous amounts. We have dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico as big as New Jersey, and how big does it have to get before we think maybe we're going in the wrong direction with that? The kids in Iowa can't drink from water from their wells on their farms because of the high nitrates that are located in those wells. But to me, our biggest cost is to our health of our people. Right now, 60% of the people in this country have at least one chronic disease. That's over half, 60%. 40% have two or more. We've already heard some reference to that, to overweight and to things like diabetes are rampant. These are all, money is being extracted by big companies who really don't want to see anything change because they're making a lot of money the way it is right now. But these situations are not sustainable. So what is the solution? One solution I see is regenerative organic agriculture. I think it's not only a solution, but it's the future of agriculture. So this is my combine. Now I've got a cab and air conditioning. Wow. It was fantastic. No more dust down my neck and the hot sun on my head. Anyway, I came back, as you heard, in '78 to the farm. And after, in 2018, turned it over to the next generation, a couple of guys who have been working for me, and now they have their turn. And so they're doing great. They're also continuing our organic tradition. You heard about the conversion, the Montana Flour and Grains we started to try to sell our crops by the pound instead of by the truckload to bakers and to whole grain bakeries, mostly in California at that time. We started converting to regenerative organic, which is a whole chapter. Antoinette said I only had 15 minutes, so I decided to write a book. She showed you that, right? And in chapter 4, you can read all about that conversion. So my goals now were high quality, high nutrition, economic stability of both the farm and the community that surrounds us. So here's how we accomplish those goals with local regenerative organic agriculture. We lower the input costs of the things that we buy or what we need for our farm, because now we're growing all of our own fertilizer. It doesn't cost us near as much as it is to pay for it and to have it shipped in. Prosperous farms, then, we started making money actually as a farm. We reduced our debt. We became prosperous, and that means we made more than we spent. And prosperous farms then help support prosperous communities. We ended chemical poisoning of the environment that is around us. We've already heard some talk about the opportunity for carbon sequestration, which increasing the organic matter in the soil plays a big role in. And most of all, and most exciting to me, is we're improving the health of our people by chemical-free and high nutrient density food. It's a situation where everybody wins, and that's the kind of business I like to do. So the future of food, I think, starts on the farm. And the principles of organic regenerative agriculture are first diversity, because if you look at nature, there's no monoculture in nature. The closer we mimic nature in its diversity, the more success we can have on the farm as a community, as a culture, as a society. The second principle is soil regeneration. Healthy soils plus high nutrient-dense seeds, I believe, equals healthy plants producing healthy communities. As regenerative organic farmers, we feed the soil and not the plants. And we let the soil feed the plants. We build and support our communities. We increase food security. Let me just give you one example. If the future of food starts on the farm, where does it end? I say it ends on our plate. And so what's on your plate? Take a look sometime. Think about what's on your plate. And think about what we've done to change that. All in the idea of making it cheaper, more available, and more abundant. So let's take wheat, for example. The industrialized goals for wheat production were to have high yields for the farmers in terms of grain, and high yields in terms of low volume for the bakers. So you see there in the pictures how the plant breeders over the years decreased the height of the wheat to make it more, yield more. While at the same time, the bakers are using less wheat to make more bread. Imagine this, folks. If you were a baker selling air for the price of bread. That was very interesting to these guys. And that's what was going on. They could make more and more bread with less and less wheat. The problem with all that is that the unintended consequences that started to show up. We were using fast-rising yeast so we can make it faster. So the yeast only had time in the bread making to digest the sugar that they put in, and it didn't even get to digesting the proteins, some of which were causing people trouble. So in the oven it went. If you compare that to sourdough process, which takes a lot longer, and in case research has shown in cases of 3 or 4 day sourdough fermentation, which no one uses it quite that long, but you can destroy 95% of all the gluten in flour, and therefore you don't have the problem with gluten. Glyphosate residues are another thing that cause people health problems when they eat the bread, and there's some of that, more and more. To this point, 20% of the population of this country now can no longer enjoy what we call modern wheat because of some kind of malady that is causing them. But what about the other 80%? We also, I don't have time, chapter 5 can tell you all about the discovery of ancient wheat. That is really a fun story, but I'd have to tell you, I wear it closest to my heart as I can get. It's on my hat here. And we got some treats for you afterwards. You can taste it yourself. But it's a wheat that was never hybridized. It came from the old country, and it doesn't yield as much, but it tastes great, and people who have trouble eating modern wheat can eat it. My question was, why was that? So we started doing some research. We found some folks in Italy that were also interested in helping us, and so we found volunteers that had clinical diseases, and we compared modern wheat with eating ancient wheat with irritable bowel syndrome patients, cardiovascular disease patients, diabetics, non-alcoholic fatty liver syndrome patients, and fibromyalgia patients, and every result was very, very similar. In all cases, we found an extreme increase in anti-inflammatory properties. 30 to 45%. This is something that pills can't do. Medicine can't do this. It comes in a bottle. It comes out of the pharmacy. We had an increase in antioxidant capacity. We had a decrease in cholesterol. This is really important for the diabetics, and blood sugar. And insulin went down. Insulin resistance went down. Magnesium, zinc, and calcium levels in the blood went up. When I started reviewing all of this result, the link to me between food and medicine became overwhelming. And I really started to believe and really preach that food is and should be our medicine, and medicine is and should be our food. In 70 years, people always talk about, the high cost of food and all this kind of stuff. If you take the cost of food and you add it to the cost of health care in this country, over the last 50 or 60 years, the result, the sum of those two is almost exactly the same through all that time. What's different is the cost of each. So food has gone down, down, down. The cost of healthcare has gone up, up, up. And I don't think that's just happenstance. So let me just spend just a minute before we close on revitalizing rural America. So Antoinette mentioned about the 2 businesses we started on our farm, again, to help increase the value of what we're selling. The oil barn, it was my old cow barn on the right, and the Big Sandy Organics on the bottom there. Our goal was to keep it local, keep it regional. The oil barn, we were producing local, cold-pressed, non-refined, high-oleic safflower oil. It's the best kind of oil for popcorn, and also it's good for your heart. We increased the profits greatly when we were able to sell the oil twice. So we used it first, sold it to Montana State University and the University of Montana for their fry oils. That was a nice big customer. And we got back the used oil, we cleaned it and filtered it and put it in our tractor. So we sold it twice. That really increases the bottom line. And if we would think more about reusing that kind of a cycle rather than fighting over food versus fuel in our acres, but use acres where we grow a crop that's first used for food and then could be used for fuel, it would be a big help to us, I think. In Big Sandy Organics, we were making a snack where we use 3 ingredients: oil, that I just told you about, our ancient grain I mentioned, and a little salt. And I brought some packages that we'll put out here in the break that you can all try one and see what you think. And if you really like it, there's a website on the back that you can... So now, folks, instead of selling grain by the pound, now we're selling our grain by the ounce. And that really also helps with the bottom line a lot. So in closing, here's my challenge to all of you. Be the change that you want to see. And the change in the world that I think can really happen is by the increase in regenerative organic food production and first of all, being eaten. And that's where you come in. You can change the world one bite at a time. Buy one more organic item every time you go shopping, and you will be changing the world. Support local. And this is the graph is what can happen. The last 35 years since I started organic, we went from near 0 in this country to 6% of the food now in this country is organic. If we continue at that rate, it's about 8%. This doesn't even get into the tipping point stuff. By 2050, we could be at 100%, very, very close to 100%, and you all can be a part of that solution. So, eat organic, be wise, be well, be thankful, be kind, and thank you very much.
All right. Should I go for it? Well, thank you, Bob. That was really inspiring. I am your neighbor living in Wyoming, but I'm Nona Yehia, and if you see me around the room, I'm not who you might pin out as the vertical farmer in the room. I'm actually an architect by trade. I actually went to Columbia University. This is my alma mater. I'm very excited to be here with you all today. And I became an architect because I really believe that architecture can be a powerful vehicle for change. What do I mean by that? Well, we all saw the result of not paying attention to people with Soylent Green, right? That really inspired me to become an architect and to be a part of the change that we want to see. So the buildings and systems that make up the fabric of our cities can and should be designed to meet the 21st century challenges of today and to serve all members of 21st century society, especially those on the margins. Today, as we're here to talk about cities, 55% of the world's population lives in cities, and this is expected to raise to 80% by 2050. How can we reconsider, as we're having this national conversation about infrastructure, how can we reconsider infrastructure to better serve our cities? So I'm excited to be with you here today in this forum to discuss controlled environment agriculture, what I'm going to call CEA from now on, from this perspective, and to assert that it is high time to conceive of the urban farm as a new type of civic infrastructure that enables full engagement in community and civic life and utilizes food to solve multiple problems simultaneously. We must build this new type of building to be more robust and to achieve greater impact on the most vexing and troubling issues confronting our communities, our nation, and the planet at large. At Vertical Harvest, we fervently believe that food is the strongest connection to human environmental health, and food will be the defining issue of the 21st century. Why? Because as we look to 2050, there will be 9 billion people on the planet. We need to increase 70% in calories to feed everyone, but we'll only have a quarter of the arable land and 1/3 less water to do that. And we'll have to do that in the face of the climate extremes that we've been seeing and that we've been talking about this morning. The way we grow and distribute food is not stable or resilient, especially for vulnerable populations. So how are we going to address this? Climate change isn't just an environmental issue. It's a social justice issue, a public health issue, and an economic resiliency issue. We have an opportunity with CEA to address all four within the private sector, but we can't do it alone. We need public partnerships. So it's with this belief and these daunting challenges that 10 years ago, following my passion for food and experiences growing up with a brother with disabilities, that I, along with a talented group of professionals in Jackson, Wyoming, began building a business to address key issues in our community. If you've ever been to Wyoming, like Bob, we have an incredibly short growing season, and we import over 90% of our food. Well, that was supposed to loop, that didn't work, but you saw it. And then we also, in our community, have trouble sourcing local labor. People come to Jackson to ski, to party, they come back to the coasts, right? I moved to Jackson Hole from New York City. I fell in love with the community and I stayed, and I became really concerned about how we can sustain the local community. We were dedicated to the notion that sustainable communities are successful ones. And so our mission started with a simple mandate: responsibly grow as much food as possible, provide as many quality jobs as possible, and do year-round. Wow, I really failed on the intriguing slides. I don't know how to make that play again, but I'll go to the next one. So this mission led us to become the vertical farmers that we are today, designing and operating our flagship farm, the first of its kind in North America, as a 3-story hydroponic farm that grows 10 acres of food on 1/10 of an acre. It also provides meaningful, consistent employment for people with disabilities, and physical and intellectual, who live in our community, but historically don't have a path to stable employment. We've also seen how our farm is a type of civic infrastructure that enables civic capacity, aiming to develop a farm that embodies conscious and radical inclusion. We talked about that this morning, eliciting voices of all to cultivate and reinforce a burgeoning industry. Why would this kind of farm, this technology, be important to people? 6 years into operation, we have seen how food can have a profound impact on our community and the people in it. But what started as a grassroots effort was always couched in global issues. The concentrated nature of our national and global food systems creates vulnerabilities. The way we distribute food right now is not stable, resilient, dependable. This is a clear challenge, but equally a profound opportunity for transformation. We can create new models that exist at the intersection of food security, urban redevelopment, and the environment. So it's high time for point solutions to give way to systemic and resilient ones. Point solutions only alleviate symptoms, but don't address root causes. They only solve one problem at a time. And we have the opportunity to utilize food to solve multiple problems simultaneously. And if we don't address root causes, we won't be able to stop the collapse of our natural and social systems. So the UN has challenged companies to play a big role in addressing global sustainability. I see that we're one slide ahead. As the 17 SDG goals indicate, that to make any real headway, you have to design solutions that make progress against multiple challenges simultaneously. This year, what we've all experienced together, we've seen how fraught and fragile our food system is. We are in the need of a great food transformation. There are no silver bullet solutions. This transformation will not happen without widespread, multi-sector, multi-level action that leverages innovation for systemic change. CEA is one of those innovations. As we all know, it allows for optimized growing conditions, incredible efficiency with valuable resources like water and land, and is less harmful with reduced fertilizers and pesticides with no runoff. And most critically, it allows farmers to grow anywhere. And vertical CEA allows us to optimize how much food we can grow in limited areas. By going up, we are actually increasing the available surface area for cultivation and making it possible to reconnect the farm to the urban center so Bob can do what he does so well in Montana. But we believe that it is the promise of scale that will enable CEA to contribute to a substantial realignment of the food system priorities and move the industry beyond a point solution. Let me be clear, CEA will never replace traditional farming, but it can bolster the local food economy in vital ways, which is why I don't know why this is progressing without me, it's just doing it on its own. And so we'll go back here. So this is why our mission at Vertical Harvest is a big and audacious one. We help the planet, people, and the public grow well. It's a little like the three-part equation we saw earlier. We do grow better food and futures where food becomes our medium to make positive change. I want to tell you about the experience with some of our farmers. Sean, who spent his life washing dishes, is now a facilities engineer with a unique knowledge in a nascent and growing industry. Michelle, who worked 20 years in the back of a kitchen and now heads our lettuce growing department. Now, this population only had access to entry-level positions. We all have to start somewhere, but there was no path to meaningful work careers. So it's a sea change of perception of what people with disabilities are able to do. So we're able to reinvent who our farmers are. This is how Vertical Harvest is creating smarter, greener, and more equitable farms that grow better food and futures where food becomes our medium. We envision a food system where, regardless of race, class, gender, or social identity, everyone has the right to healthy food. Our model locates farms on underutilized land in urban neighborhoods to maximize impact. Because they are in cities, it means energy is cheaper. Now, this is a big weakness of the industry thus far, but as the grid gets greener, so will we. We are laser focused at making these farms more energy efficient. We hire from underrepresented communities who struggle to find consistent employment at a livable wage. We are able to grow over 2 million pounds of produce distributed from farm to fork within 24 hours with the associated peak of nutritional and taste. We've also created a new type of civic building valued like a public library or a community center, one that's a reflection of a community's values and responsive to its needs and wants. States and cities across the globe are recognizing the benefits of localizing the food system. Local is where it's at, and that's where we can come together. This effort will take targeted and fundamental changes to the food system, including increased investment, alternative approaches to funding. Thank you to our representative from the USDA, but we've already seen that start to take place. So this is our farm in Westbrook, Maine, that we're building right now. So this is the farm that can produce over 2 million pounds of produce to the local community year-round. So we funded this using city, state, and federal resources, which we will continue as we go across the nation. So if we can create a network of farms, and right now we're on track to building 20, where we started with a goal of 10, based on this model that can bolster the local food food economies at scale, then at scale, we can participate in the creation of a fair and sustainable food system. At scale, CEA can pursue creative partnerships across business, policy, and science to spur action for change and increased food access. Just last week, I was in New York City again, speaking to the UN about this. At scale, we can reconnect our cities with food, quality food that is grown, processed, and distributed within our communities. Our food is not a luxury item. We grow lettuces, petite greens, and microgreens, and I want to focus on microgreens because what James was talking to us before, we can grow food that has more packed to it. Microgreens are baby plants that have 40 times the nutritional equivalent of their adult counterpart. The UN has been focusing on that crop to solve the nutrition gap globally. So if we can grow a portfolio of products, we can work with a range of sales channels. This is our distinct value proposition. We don't just sell to Whole Foods. We work with local institutions, the school districts, the hospitals, the nursing homes, college campuses, selling our produce and building relationships to help solve challenges around food insecurity. And we're just getting started, like I said. We've established a civic model that is a win-win for communities across the nation. So we're experiencing right now collectively a converging economic, climate, and health crisis that is rooted in people's access to healthy food, resilient and nourishing jobs. The time is now to support this burgeoning industry, to focus on what's important to people, to come together and to recognize that farms are critical infrastructure. They're able to use food as a connector, and that we have the capacity, once we build at scale, to engage all sectors, enlist all voices, and build thoroughfares for information and practice exchange. The time is now. We have to support these kind of innovative efforts because we are at a tipping point. And so this is why I hope that you will take an interest in indoor agriculture, what it means to you, what it means to our families, our neighborhoods, our communities, and our cities. Thank you. Looking forward to the discussion.
Good job.
Two extremely wonderful examples of regenerative agriculture in very different spaces. I think this was just delightful to hear you with very similar foundations, but different expressions of it. I open the floor up to questions. There are two mics. Please step up. I think we have a few minutes, so if you have some questions for our speakers, feel free to approach the mic. I see Chris Tucker is...
Thank you. That was fantastic. So the spatial implications of all of this, right? So you made some statements about the 40 times more dense use of space, but it's by particular crops, right?
Yes.
So you do microgreens, you do lettuces, but I love vertical farming, so I'm just Googling vertical farm, and I put tomato and vertical farm and watermelon, and they appear to be able to do anything in a vertical farm. And I don't know if it's economical or it's the right strategy, but if you're looking forward to 2050, what crops do you think will successfully just leave traditional farming, a real estate, and end up in vertical, urban, local, in CEA environments, right? So what crops and how much space do you think would be saved between now and 2050 for rewilding or whatever?
Well, it's a great question. So let me take it one bit at a time. Yes, I think that, there are unlimited possibilities to growing indoors. In fact, there is a vertical farm that just announced at COP27 that they've just explored wheat. I don't think that that's something that we can tackle at scale now. At the year 2050, maybe. But for us, what we have to prove out, and if anybody is actually following indoor farming, what you'll know is that right now some of the companies that have been on the leading edge of this are struggling with their valuations, with their economic models. They've really focused on technology, and the technology that allows for increased yields. But what they're really doing is looking at if we can automate the whole farm. For us at Vertical Harvest, it's all about bolstering the local food economy at scale. So we actually partnered with the Netherlands, who have over 30 years of experience in hydroponics, that we saw that there was not a need to reinvent the wheel. So we're very focused with our finances on creating a sustainable business model that can replicate and really facilitate rapid expansion, because that's what we need right now. So that sustainable business case is what we hope the next round of farms will be able to show within the next 5 years. So the farm that I showed you in Maine is based on that. In Jackson, we grow tomatoes. And if you've ever been to Jackson Hole, it's 8 months of winter. So a vine-ripened tomato in the middle of winter is heaven, right? And people actually, we could sell like Airbnb stays in the greenhouse because the smell of it is amazing, right? But it's not an economical crop until it's really at scale. So for us, the lettuce, the petite greens, and the microgreens, what we're really trying to push within this portfolio of crops is the nutritional value, and show that, you know, when most of us, in fact, probably all of us in this room, eat lettuce that's been on a truck for 4 to 7 weeks by the time it gets here. It comes from California, Arizona. You might as well not spend your money on it. It is devoid of any nutritional value that you think that you're giving to your families, and it is bereft of all of it. So the local is what's important there, and then we can really see the value of these crops and then go into the berries and the tomatoes and all of the other things that make a society work. You can't feed a community on lettuce alone. Sorry, a lot of questions in that one question, but I wanted to make sure I hit them.
Yeah, this is for Bob. Coming from a long line of High Plains dryland wheat farmers, I wonder if you could talk about how your neighbors feel about what you're doing. Are you getting converts in your neighborhood to switch over?
Well, on my first experiments we tried, when my neighbors found out I was looking at organic, they just thought I'd been in California too long. But I tell you, I've had probably more calls in the last 3 years than I've had in the last 30, because the high cost of chemicals, the high cost of fertilizer, and sometimes availability, people are very interested in trying to have more independence, more diversity, and growing more of their own inputs. So there's more and more. There's probably 5 or 6 now on our side of town, and about half that many on the other side of Big Sandy. It's still a small percent, but it's growing, and there's more interest in it probably than any other type of agriculture and any other type of solution. So I'm very excited about that. And part of my idea with my goal to create a regenerative organic research center based on research and education and health is to show people right close up how it can be done, and to help solve some of the problems that some are having that keeps them from continuing or crossing into it. No, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. This is really very inspirational, and I hope that you can both stay around, because I'm sure there are more questions out there in the audience, and I know we have a break in a little while, and I hope that people will get a chance to talk with you.
I'll put the treats on this table, right?
All right, yes.
Okay, at the break.
Thank you.